all of them said to me the same thing. I saw my dad destroyed by my mother in divorce court. And they said it that way. They didn't say it was destroyed by the courts. They said it was destroyed by their mother. And they do not intend to have that happen to them. And they were taken from their fathers forcefully. And so their idea is to have children where they actually have rights, and then they can get married to a woman, but she won't be able to take their children. And I think it's a rational approach to dealing with the risks of marriage in the modern world.
That's a horrifying reality.
It is.
And I've also heard many similar stories. This is why you have, it's not exactly why you have some of these groups like
Men Go Their Own Way.
Yes, MGTOW, right?
Yeah,
but do you want to?
I'm opposed to MGTOW, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, I wanna.
Elaborate and give us your view.
Absolutely, 100% sympathetic to Jeff's position. He is absolutely correct about how the divorce courts stack the deck against men and against fathers, and very often allow the woman to weaponize the courts against men who all they want is to love and be connected to their children, but then they end up paying through the nose for kids they never get to see. And I feel bad for the men, but I'm enraged on behalf of the kids. Enraged. What they are losing, what Jeff's sons have lost, is not something that can ever be quantified. Not at all. It's a lifelong loss that they're going to experience that wound forever. They're being starved of not just the male love that all children need, but the biological identity that comes from being raised by their own dad. I mean, what the courts have done to Jeff and what they are doing to thousands of other men across this country is criminal.
And you see why I love Katie Faust.
Well,
what's going on, everyone? It's Talks with Kenny here today. And it's the Inconvenient Truth series. This time we'll be doing the Inconvenient Truth about the family court. Now, you can't talk about family court without talking about divorce, marriage, right? Parental rights, children's rights. There's a lot of issues that are intermingled in the family court. And one thing I want to bring out in this Inconvenient Truth series about family court is that the left have this, I don't understand the people on the left. They have this weird thing where they want equality, but for some reason, when it threatens an advantage that a woman has, they don't want to talk about it, or they want to minimize it, or they want to downplay it. For instance, I came from a separated household. Now, my parents weren't officially married, but I was used to having my father 100% of the time, and I only had him 50% of the time. And as I got older, I had less access to my father because he moved. And it seemed like the left has a problem acknowledging that there's a bias in family court, right? And when men bring up the fact that they only get custody like what, maybe 10, 20% of the time, they try to make this argument that, oh, if men try, they always get custody. It's like, no, but the problem is you don't see the bias that the man has to make an uphill battle. The man has to put in more effort just to get the same parental rights as the woman, right? It should be automatically assumed it's 50-50, right? But for some reason, the man has to fight for custody because at the end of the day, the left don't want to acknowledge that there's a financial incentive for the woman to position herself as the primary caregiver for the child. More parental rights over the child. They want it 7-30 because if it's 70% the mothers and 30% the fathers, she can justify getting child support, which always made no sense to me, right? But hey, I digress. So in the first, this is going to be a part of the video where I want to focus specifically on parental alienation. And this first clip this next clip here is going to kind of give you an overview of what the hell is the problem with parental alienation in our current system and how it incentivizes and allows women, because women are the primary culprits of this, of parentally alienating the father and some of the societal ills that are the result of this. Let's take a look.
Functionally, what children are right now is accessories to be cut and pasted into any and every adult relationship, right? We have an understanding of parental rights to their children, but we don't have an idea of children's rights to their own parents. And those actually go together, right? People care which baby they take home from the hospital. They don't want just any kid in the nursery. They actually want their baby. Mm-hmm. There's something precious and special about taking your own child home. There is something distinct and wonderful about your own progeny. And we can get into adoption later, but there was that ridiculous article like last week that was like, wanting your own biological children is,
oh yes,
what was it called? It was a racist. I know she equated it with white supremacy or whatever it was. Yeah. And that is like all of these arguments. And I think where we're going with your argument, Jeff, is this idea that you're going to be able to overhaul human nature. You, no matter how technology changes, no matter how law changes, no matter how culture changes, you cannot overhaul child nature. Mm-hmm. And children have a natural right to be known and loved by both of their biological parents. Those two adults grant children statistically the safest home that they're going to experience. Like if your wife remarries, the man that joins her life will never be as statistically connected to, invested in, and protective of your sons
He'll be
as
one of the
you
greatest
are.
threats to him.
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is right. Not only will he not be as connected and invested, he will statistically be one of the most dangerous people in their
That's
life. Okay, so we have to get very clear about children having a right to their own mother and father. The threats that have disconnected children from that are cultural, legal, and technological. So we'll be talking about one of the technological shifts that have commodified children and turned them into functional accessories. But the legal shifts have also been at play since the late 60s, and it began with no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce was the first, in essence, redefinition of the family. It transformed what used to be the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known, marriage, into just another vehicle of adult fulfillment. It said, we used to have this idea that marriage was going to be permanent, and the only time you would break it up is if one spouse was found to be at fault of abuse, adultery, abandonment, addiction. But we turned to no-fault divorce. And since women have sort of higher rates of emotional expectation, they tend to be dissatisfied more quickly in the marriage. And when you can get out of it for no fault, they get out of it sooner. So that was the original redefinition of marriage, and legally what put all of this in place when it comes to treating children as accessories.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we do treat children like a commodity, right? They're just a means to an end. Oh, then, you know, I want a kid, I want 3, I want 5. Like, we got into this, I guess that's because of our technological age, and that's fine. But I'm starting to have this idea that there's a duty and responsibility as a parent that you have, like, the kids didn't choose to be in this world. You chose to want them, essentially, you did the actions required for them to be in this world. And I think that we have to take responsibility for them. And because we're responsible for children, this is why parents have authority over them. And I think that parental alienation is a violation of a child's rights, right? Because I've seen it's very common in the Black community that the mom, or you hear stories of the mom, like I forgot, there was a famous rapper somewhere that he found out his mom knew who his father was for 50 years, and she just now told him, or he just found out who his father was. Essentially, the mom is being the gatekeeper with access to the father. And I believe that is the child's right to know who their father is, where their father's at. The mom has no right to decide what is, if the child should or shouldn't have access to the father. And I think this is one violation and one example that she's pointing out on how we treat children's rights secondary to the parents' rights. Now, here's another thing I want to kind of push on this point of parental alienation, and how she made up the point about how single moms put their kids in the most vulnerable position. And that's the argument I'm going to make, because I came from a house, I came from a single mother. And being in the neighborhood, I noticed that you're more liable to drop out of school, get teen pregnancy. Why? Because you have limited adult supervision. That's the main reason. And you're more influenced with your culture. This is why in Chicago, when they do the teen takeovers, you're like, how are these kids this late at night? Well, mom might be working, or mom is doing her own business and she's not really paying attention to the kid because she trusts the kid or whatever. But I see that as enabling behavior. And this is why I think a lot of Black women face abuse, sexual abuse specifically, in their own households, because their mom is a single mom, so she'll still be dating. So she's bringing around men around the house. And obviously, there's stats out there. Men find women between 18 to about 27, 25 attractive. So if you have a young daughter, teenage daughter, there's cases, and I'm speaking anecdotally, that the man will try to get at the daughter as well as the mother. When the mom's not there, he's trying to get at the daughter, right? And I know I'm speaking to some Black woman that has personally experienced this. And when the daughter calls out the boyfriend or tells the mom, hey, your boyfriend's trying to like come on to me, the mom will get jealous, resentful, and it causes conflict between the mother and the daughter. And I've seen it personally happen, right? I have some crazy stories, bro. If you knew some of the ratchet-ish that I was exposed to as a child, bro. But I digress. I want to get into the next part because I think I've been staying too long on this topic. And they'll kind of like, in the next clip, they'll kind of debate it out. What exactly is children's rights and how is rights defined? Let's take a look.
This is the interesting thing about the rights of the child. If the parents are fighting and it's bad, not to the point of abuse, but screaming, I think they should be reprimanded by the court, saying like, you are obligated to stop and you have to tone it down because this is for the kids.
Yeah.
So we don't want children growing up in an environment where parents are just screaming at each other 24/7.
Yeah.
And so the
But you
solution
punish the parents for that, not the
exactly.
kids.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're
So-
hired, dude. You're totally hired.
Here's an interesting thing about the rights of children, right? We often hear from the modern day left establishment narratives
Yeah.
that children have a right to just insert and you name it. and
Yeah,
this-
to having their transgender identity hidden from their
Yes.
parents. They have a right to testosterone from Planned Parenthood.
But my view is it's more so a right to your parents acting responsibly to
Bingo.
protect you.
Okay.
That's
that's
where I
right.
agree.
Meaning the child can't decide he wants to eat ice cream.
Yeah.
That it is a violation of the rights of the child for a parent to just give them 3 gallons of ice cream for,
Yes.
for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
So here's the thing, like I have a children's rights nonprofit, and
Yes.
that is the right word for it. The reality is that children's right to their own mother and father, it actually might be too weak of a term. They have such a claim to their own parents that there really is very little language we could use to describe the strength of that claim. Okay, so I understand that rights
It's the
is
most
disputed.
fundamental human thing.
It is like literally one of the most universal
All
human
human
longings.
law and all human
Yes.
civilization is based on that one thing.
That's right. And so children have a right to be known and loved by their mother and father. They have a right to life. They have a right to
Yeah.
an intact body, an unmedicalized body.
Yeah.
They have a right to innocence. It is the duty of parents to protect those rights.
I love that you're talking about duties.
Well, they go together. In natural law theory, rights and duties are two sides of the same
That's
coin.
correct.
Okay. So you're exactly right, Tim, that there's a lot of momentum on the right when it comes to parental rights, and that's good. But parental rights has limits. You do not have a right to chemically sterilize your child just because you think I'm the parent, I can do what I want.
It's so interesting how, like, when you think about family court and like some of the things some of the assumptions they make, it seems like there's a lack of understanding, right? Like, what is human rights? Because this is why I'm a pro-life like person, right? Because I believe that if you have human rights, if you're a human life, you deserve human rights. And I always grew up when your rights end where another's begin. You don't have the right to decide if someone gets to live or die. You get to decide whether you get to live or die because no one can really stop you theoretically from killing yourself. That's your right, right? No one else can stop you. If you chose to, you can find a corner somewhere and boom, end your life. But you don't have the right to go in and end someone else's, right? And I believe that the women's rights, abortion is not a human right. I don't believe that because you violate someone else's, regardless of how young they are. They can be 7 weeks old or 7 years old. It doesn't matter. Like, if it's a human life, you don't have the right to end another. That's pretty much where the core philosophy surrounding the abortion debate stems from. And I also kind of project that out in family court as well, as they were talking about the duties and responsibilities and how they see no fault divorce and how it changed legally the culture of marriage. It served a function. Now I know recently, and there's one of the reasons I'm making this video too, is that the red pill and the conservatives are right now, they're beefing right now. They're warring with each other right now. And I think it's just that I think what the red pill is critiquing, and I'm steel manning the red pill, because this is what I like to do. I like to steel man. I don't like to sit here and try to straw man people and say, you just want everyone to be married and look at the laws and stuff. Is the red pill saying, hey, there's no logical, rational reason for men to get married in 2023. Look at our dating culture. Look at the women with unrealistic expectation where they'll laugh off a man if he makes $75K a year in Miami, apparently. So, you can take that with a grain of salt if you want. But there's this culture of, if you're not a high value man, then you ain't worth their time, right? If you look at Tinder is the primary example of this. 80% of the women are only swiping right, aka they only like pictures of 20% of the male population that's on Tinder today. This is the kind of craziness that the red pill calls out. And conservatives, we tend to be blind to this. I'm not blind to it because, obviously I'm the younger. I think younger conservatives see the problem. Older conservatives seem more disconnected. And I think that's not a political dig at conservatives. I just think it's a generational gap. That's all it is. So the problem is that we noticed the problem with no fault divorce and how it's invited a lot of problems that could not be foreseen, right? This is where I think like a lot of the states, they don't follow what they preach about the best interest of the child. Because if you was looking at statistics, what the best interest of the child, would it be the best interest of the child to put them in a situation where they'll be more likely to be in poverty, where they'll be more likely to be evicted out of their house? I'm talking about being raised with a single mom. right? Because black women are less financially literate. No matter how much money they make, they seem to find a way to spend it. Black women are also more likely to be evicted out of their house. And instead of taking personal responsibility for that and saying, hey, we didn't manage our money, we didn't manage our money well, we didn't manage our resources well, I was irresponsible, they'll say racism, sexism, that's why I got evicted. Okay. How exactly the parental rights paradigm is used and abused in family court, and this is the inconvenient truth about family court, is that it doesn't serve the best interest of the child, it serves the best interest of the state. Let's take a look.
Everything has pluses and minuses, right? The world's not, a black and white. The danger of children's rights is what we see in the family courts today, where unfortunately we live in a decadent society.
That's
and I
true.
mean that in the Latin sense,
Right.
decadenced,
Mhm.
out of step with one another.
Mm.
There's no general agreement on what constitutes what's, good for a child in many circumstances. So the notion of children's rights could be used in such a way as to force parents in California to transition their children. And it is actually being used that way.
Well, properly defining rights is important. It's very much
Mhm.
like The Incredibles. If everything is a right, nothing is a
Yeah.
right. You do have to properly
do.
define what children's rights are.
And you want to give the widest scope to parenting,
Mhm.
right? Because we recognize that geographical and cultural
Mhm.
conditions, even in America, are not identical.
Even just personality differences with kids.
Yeah,
That's a great point. If everything's a right, then nothing is a right. And this is one of the my biggest critique on liberals, progressives. They try to keep things very vague. And I think when you try to use something when you try to make a vague or very abstract or broad statement, it's easy to do things for your own best interest without clearly articulating how it's in the best interest of the child, right? We need to define what is in the best interest of the child. Is it economic success? Is it well-being? We need to find out what is priority here. And I think this is why family court has been such a in my view, a corrupt institution, right? And Jeff, being a man who went through the family court system, trying to save his son from being transitioned into a girl, right? And a lot of the left, I don't understand the left. They care about mental health so much, but they don't want to talk about the negative effects of children when they experience divorce. And I experienced it. I'm talking about personally from my experience. When my parents separated, that hurt me. I had trust issues for a long time, bro. I had to overcome a lot of stuff. I had a lot of anger problems because I didn't realize that I was frustrated at the situation that happened with my parents separating it. And I end up taking it out on other kids, or if a kid said something wrong to me, I was ready to blow up on them, right? And a lot of the left, or a lot of the people who are so pro divorce, oh, no fault divorce, best thing ever, they don't want to recognize some of the damage that divorce causes in our society. Instead of trying to, okay, this is a benefit to divorce, but let's try to mitigate some of the damage that divorce may have inadvertently caused. This is why the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So on this next clip, Jeff is going to provide some of the reasons why family court is the way it is. And I already gave you a hint, aka the state benefits from divorce currently being this way.
Solution is, I believe, ending no-fault divorce, right? Completely ending no-fault divorce. And I would be even willing to compromise, because we live in a world, a democracy, where we have to, I would compromise and say, you may have no-fault divorce if there are no children in the marriage. If there are children in the marriage, it converts to a no-fault divorce.
I like that.
And now we have created a way for people to...
You mean it converts off of no fault divorce?
You would have to go to an at-fault model at that point.
Yeah, you go to an at-fault model when you have children.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, and I'm willing to compromise with people who want these sort of what I call emotional marriages. I'm willing, okay, fine, let's do that. I think we have to do some other things with, correcting the legal system around domestic violence and some other stuff. There are legal ways to do this. I'm just telling you that you're fighting because of Title 4D reimbursements to the states, which are heavily invested in divorce and only exist when fathers are out of the home, just like the welfare system destroyed the black families in this country. When these systems are so big, I mean, you're talking about trillions of dollars. These are bigger than some of the largest defense
Jeff is
programs.
the first one that educated me on this reality.
Yeah.
He really knows this.
Yeah, they're larger than some of the largest defense programs, and we can't get rid of these defense programs.
I like that example he brought, the defense programs, right? The left has been complaining, oh my God, we have so much money in the military, we don't need it, it's inefficient, it's unusable, we should be using that resources for something else. Jeff here is making the same point about family court. There's too much money in it, even more money than the defense fund. So that means the family court is even worse than the military industrial complex. Is even worse than that because there's more invested interest in that. They want women to have primary custody because they get the reimbursement. They have purpose. They have justification for welfare to exist because they, like I told you, I already warned you, being single now in 2023 is a luxury now because cost of living has risen so high that it's almost like you have to make a higher and higher and higher income to be able to live by yourself completely without government help, without government subsidies, right? I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out the problem. And I like his solution. He's meeting in the middle, right? Because liberals, right, like liberal couples, Democratic couples, they're more likely to do this dual income, no kids lifestyle. So you keep no fault divorce for them. They say, hey, they like liberals don't even want to have kids because they worry about climate change and whatever, whether it's true or false. That's the reasons they give for why they don't want to have kids. That's fine. They have a no fault divorce model. The moment you have children, it turns into hey, you can't just break up the family for any other reason because the kid needs 2-parent households for the betterment of their existence. And if you look at every observable metric, that is true. Kids growing up in a 2-parent household that are biologically their parents have a higher success rates than in society than kids born in single-parent household or adopted families. That's just the facts. So if we're evaluating everything through what is in the best interest of the child, wouldn't that make it, hey, we should incentivize the two families to stay together? We should not incentivize people breaking up their divorce because, oh, I cheated on you, but you make more money, so I'm gonna get alimony, child support. Like, we want to prevent things like that from happening. And I just think that's one possible solution that we can have as a country. But I like the fact that Jeff points out a lot of the problems systematically that's been going on in our country, that we don't have a common consensus of what is a child's right, what is a parental rights, right? How exactly, what is a good metric of judging what is in the best interest of the child? It just all seemed like hand wavy. Hey, judge, you decide what you want to do, and the judge has a conflict of interest because they go, oh, we get the Title D reimbursements that Jeff just brung out, the clip we just watched. So there's it's a very complicated, very convoluted thing, and I can go for hours on this. I've been trying to keep myself this is probably the second time I try to record it because I probably went like 10 minutes on a diatribe about family court. So this is the most concise I can be about the family court. And the inconvenient truth is that the family court does not do things on the best interest of the child, because if it was if it actually believed what it was saying, a lot of the times the kid will be given custody to the father. I'm just being honest here, because there's stats out there that show that when fathers do have an opportunity to have the child performs way better in life. Like, hell, look at me. I come from a co-parenting situation, and I have a better outcome in life than most kids primarily raised by their single mom, right? And even when you take the stats where single fathers are raising the kids completely alone, those kids have better outcomes. Now, maybe you can say, oh, maybe they're not as emotional. Maybe they don't, there's always an argument, but at the end of the day, life is about trade-offs. And it seemed like the better trade-off is, hey, we should be giving more custody to the fathers instead of just automatically assuming that the mother should have custody, especially when we have all this data that shows that single motherhood produces an environment that creates a lot of societal ills in our society. To me, there's no rational justification to immediately give parentalship to the mother, especially if the kids are not, especially if the kids are older than 6 years old. But that's just my take. Let me hear yours in the comment section. I know it's going to be a very interesting conversation because there's a lot of ideas and theories about how to exactly resolve this problem. I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next Inconvenient Truths. Peace.